please take their seats at this time? Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you this morning to our October meeting of the Interim Joint Committee on State Government. We're glad that you have joined us today. We do have quite a bit of items on our agenda this morning, so we will try to give everybody plenty of time to present their what they're going to be speaking about. But again, I want to say thank you for being with us today. Please silence your cell phones if you don't mind. Make sure everybody's cell phones are on silent this morning. And when we get ready to begin in just a few moments, if you need to speak, make sure your microphone's on the green light when you get ready to speak into that. Before we start the meeting today, I'm going to ask everyone to stand. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance this morning. If you will join me in the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, before we begin, we certainly want to remember all of our people in North Carolina that suffered drastically and greatly from this hurricane that has came through. And I know some of you do, and I actually have a lot of friends that lives in Western North Carolina, people I know, and it has just been devastating. And so we want to continue to remember them. I'm just going to ask everybody to bow your heads with me, and I'm going to say a quick prayer for all of our folks down there. Father, we thank you today for blessing us here in Kentucky. We know we went through tragic times several months ago with a drastic flood here, and now we pray for our friends in North Carolina and Tennessee that you would difficult time. Thank you for your blessings of this day. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you very much today. Would you, Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll at this time?
Senator Chambers Armstrong, Senator Elkins, Senator Harper Angel, Senator Mays Bledsoe, Senator McDaniel, Senator Nemes,
Present.
Senator Storm, Senator Thayer,
Here.
Senator Wheeler,
Here.
Senator Williams, Representative Bauman,
Present.
Representative Bojanowski, Representative Bowling,
Present.
Representative Branscombe,
Present.
Representative Callaway,
Present.
Representative Camuel,
Here.
Representative Chester Burton,
Here.
Representative Decker,
Present.
Representative Gooch,
Present.
Representative Graham, Representative Heath,
Here.
Representative Heverin,
Present.
Representative Heron,
Here.
Representative Hodgson, Representative Huff,
Present.
Representative Imes,
Present.
Representative Johnson, Representative Cook, Representative Lewis,
Here.
Representative Lockett,
Here.
Representative Maddox, Representative Moser, Representative Rawlings, Representative Raymond, Representative Tate, Representative Tipton, Representative Williams,
Here.
Representative Witten, Senator Mills,
I'm here.
Representative Bratcher,
I'm here, and Representative Witten is in the parking lot almost here. So she wanted me to pass
Representative
that on.
Hale.
Present. We do have a quorum today, and we are constituted that we can do business in this meeting this morning. Does anyone have any guests that you would like to recognize or to introduce? Did anybody down here? I don't see no hands, but I do have a guest. I have my new co-chair that's been elected to this position. Is going to be replacing Senator Mills soon. Gavin Hale this morning. So welcome my grandson, Gavin Hale. Just kidding there, Senator Mills, just kidding. Senator Wheeler, do you have guests?
Mr. Chair, I see one of my constituents, Chuck Mead, back here. I wasn't expecting him today, but glad to see him down here.
All right. Let's welcome Mr. Mead to our meeting this morning. First item on our agenda today is the approval of the September 24th, 2024 meeting. Is there a motion for acceptance of those minutes? There is a motion. Is there a second? Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Our first item on the agenda today is we are glad to have with us today some representatives from the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife to provide us an update to the state government committee. So if you folks from Fish and Wildlife would please approach the table there. And if you both make sure your green light is on, and if you will both introduce yourselves for the record, then you may proceed.
Commissioner Rich Storm, Kentucky Fish and Wildlife.
Jenny Gilbert, Legislative Liaison for the Department.
Commissioner and Ms. Gilbert, we're glad you're here with us today in our committee. The floor is yours. You may begin at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Also would like to mention I have Commission Member Raymer here as well. We have a commission meeting today, and I've got my Director of Marketing, Brian Blank, that's in the room today. So thank you all for having us today. It's our pleasure. All right, as you all can see in this picture, I've got a couple gals that many of you have met here, like Chairman Hale. I like to bring my kids along, so just tell you a quick story. I had the opportunity to take these girls on a turkey hunt, but that wasn't the hard part. Two little girls that have to have their hair fixed 2 hours before daylight with snacks, all kinds of technology, iPads, things of that nature. Plus, we were able to harvest a turkey, but having two little girls pop up a blind in the dark, if you can do that, you can do most anything that you want. So really proud of my daughters, and getting to spend the time in the field with them is a true blessing. So I thought this would be interesting for this committee. We have a rich outdoor heritage here in Kentucky, and so just recently one of our game wardens, which by the way Chairman Hale and many of you all here, statutorily we changed our conservation officer name to game warden, which the public relates to. Thank you all for that. That really helps us in terms of identity. But one of our game wardens shared this piece with us, and I can tell you a lot of things in Kentucky haven't changed. And so as you can see, a license to hunt and fish in Kentucky was $1. Used a lot of terminologies like a man and boys, and I led the slide. Our customer base is very, very diverse. We have women, children, we have all kinds of folks that love the outdoors, and basically all Kentuckians love the outdoors in one way or the other. But this piece from 1926, if you have a copy of this slide, I would encourage you to read it. But our outdoor resources matter, and people are enthusiastic from their dogs, their land ownership, and then ultimately not to waste or destroy any of the resources with wanton waste. So we have 7 divisions in the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Most people, when they see us, they think we're all game wardens. In fact, we're not. It's about 25% of our agency. We enforce the laws in the woods and on the water. We are the sole enforcement on the water as well. One thing I wanted to share that's been a leadership style, and this works. I came from staffing, and I've hired a lot of people in my life. When you promote people from within, it creates a great work environment. And so I can say all of my leadership have been internal promotions. And so what happens is we have a primary promotion, then we have secondary promotions, and it creates enthusiasm in that workforce. And I am very proud of the team that I have, and I can assure you from where I sit today, we have a bright future within our agency because we have talented people committed to the mission, and folks that show up and overly exceed at their job. So our Kentucky game wardens, we're currently going through a recruiting class. This is something that on an annual basis, most of y'all wouldn't know. We have the opportunity to hire one time. And with that, we can get up to about 15 recruits through DOCJT. And so if we have a year of 10 retirements and we have a recruiting class of 15 and we're very successful and we hire as many as 10, it's hard for us to gain. And so, as you can see, we have 98 sworn personnel. What does that mean to this committee? Well, it means that we don't have an officer in every county. We serve every county. But let me compare us to our northern neighbors in Ohio. Last weekend, I had the opportunity to spend some time with my family in Ohio, and I ran into some game wardens in Ohio, which are called conservation wildlife officers. They have 88 sworn personnel in the state of Ohio. And regardless of what you're doing today, it's very difficult to find help. Our agency, surprisingly, has more people apply for jobs than many of the places that I've worked in the past. For example, we had approximately 600 different people apply for these 15 jobs to be conservation officers. So we're blessed in that category, but at the same time, we're looking for the best and the brightest. So we brought back the K9 program. And I can tell you this, it's more than an ounce of goodwill. When you're in a dove field and a dog takes off running through the field, the conservation officer's not quite as scary as the ones that don't have the dog. These dogs are friendly. They assist us in many ways. For example, I can think of a fish and wildlife poaching case, and the dog in the particular case not only found drug paraphernalia, but also found the weapon that was used for the crime. And so this gives us a different tool for our toolbox, but ultimately it gives our officers a relationship with an animal that builds and enhances the mission of the agency. So as you can see, we have 3 dogs, and they're friendly. So if you're in the field and they come up and start sniffing on you, you're probably still going to be okay. Another division we have within the agency is information and education. This is a broad piece. We can talk about this a great deal, but as many of you know, we have camps across the Commonwealth. 250,000 Kentuckians have graduated or been through our camps. I have adults, and oftentimes older than me, that come up to me and say, I can't believe I didn't get this patch when I went to y'all's camp. So it's a lifelong scar if they don't get all the patches when they go through our camps. But we teach these kids all kinds of interesting concepts in the field, from fishing. They get to shoot shotguns and shoot trap. They get to explore the outdoors, and they learn life skills. And I can say more than ever, it's important that we teach these kids these skills, because oftentimes they're not getting these at home today. And something I'm very passionate about, we just started during my tenure providing overnight security at these camps, just the day and age that we live in. We took that for granted for a long time, and so we have conservation officers that are looking after our kids after hours.
Commissioner, real quick, could you just tell us how many camps do you have?
3.
Could you tell us what they are?
Yeah, so we have Camp Wallace to the south, we have Camp Webb to the east, and I'm drawing a blank here. Camp Curry to the west, and I will add to the committee members, Camp Wallace, which is in the south corridor on Lake Cumberland. It will be closed this year, so you'll probably get calls from your constituents. Why would we close it? We're going to do a dining hall remodel, and so we'll have it back up in business after this camp season.
But those kids can go to the other 2 camps. So
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. So these kids will have the opportunity to attend our other 2 camps. This is our loaner pole locations across the state, something that we're doing to move the needle. And oftentimes I'll have people say, well, do people bring these poles back? Usually they do. And we'll touch on life jacket loaner stations as well. But this tool is something that we believe in. So somebody takes a life jacket or somebody takes a pole, that's the least of our concerns. So we have people that privately have sponsored these programs throughout the state to give people those opportunities. And I can tell you all on this committee, if you'd ever like to come out to campus here in Frankfort and fish, we will loan you a pole, and we may even give you some bait where you can catch a fish while you're out there. But this works, and connecting people with opportunities in the outdoors, there's virtually no barriers. And if kids are using these, they don't have to have a fishing license in Kentucky as well. So if you want to learn more about that, go to fw.ky.gov. As many of you may have seen recently in a press release, we just opened a new exhibit at our Salado Center. Some folks say Salado. This is the second most visited place in Frankfort behind here at the Capitol. We have lots of good resources. If you want to come out to see anything from a bison to a rattlesnake, we have them on campus. I know that's unbelievable. That we got people that feed snakes, we got people that feed elk. That's some of the jobs that we have. But if you'd like to come out and take a walk, we have a beautiful green space. We have a 1 mile walk around our lake, and then we have the Salado Center, and I'd love to show you around if y'all have that opportunity. And Salado is open 9 to 4 each day and closed on Mondays, open on Saturdays.
We have a new focus on Hunter Ed for that too.
We do. So hunter education is something that is required in Kentucky, and you can connect with us at Salado. You can connect with us online if you're interested in our hunter education program. And there's an online course, and then there's a opportunity to go to a shooting range to get the second part of your hunter education. So engineering and IT, this is where I think I'll get almost everybody's attention. These are sites and projects that we do across the state. And so I'll use Will Green Lake as an example. You can see in the ribbon cutting ceremony, and I have another story to tell, but if you look at the bottom picture, we have started putting these handicap kayak canoe launch sites across the state. And why does this matter? Has anybody ever beached a kayak and tried to get out of it? If you want a post on YouTube, just go to a boat ramp and watch a guy like me try to get out of a kayak that's sitting straight up, so it's like an incline sit-up. Well, there's a lot of folks that can come on site and they can launch a kayak from a wheelchair. And so if you go to the next slide, this courtesy dock works, and actually I guess I need to go to the slide following this if we can go play reverse.
This is the gentleman right here.
Okay, I'm sorry.
In the top right.
Yep. So when we went to Will Green Lake, we had a ribbon cutting ceremony. It was status quo. And we had a gentleman come out, and the guy in the wheelchair, and this was impromptu, and I think it's worthwhile to tell this story. His name's Casey Keeney, and I asked Casey if I could share with this committee today his story. So Casey came out and gave his testimony about what happened to him, and he said, "Do you realize what you did when you built this ramp here, this launch site for handicapped people?" He said, "You all changed my life." He's looking for independence, and that's really a hard conversation for us to have with somebody that has a physical struggle. But he came out, he gave his testimony, and he said, "I have something to look forward to every day that I can do on my own." We did not build this site for Casey. We had no idea Casey existed in that area. And it was a heartwarming story, and he said, "I want to do anything I can to help you all." But we walked away from that, and I truly was moved that had happened. So God opened a door for us with that man and in that community, and who knows how many people are going to be blessed to use that ramp and that facility. So these projects are possible statewide, and again, I think you all be interested in this program, but I'd love to tell you more about it. 1.1 million people in Kentucky boat and do water-related activities, including fishing. Engineering and IT continued. These are some projects that we have that are the top 3 have been built. For example, I went to that boat ramp and kind of had to roll out of it. Number 3 there at Hingston in Representative Cook's area. Beautiful, beautiful site, 10 miles of water that we've not been able to publicly access. Great project. And West Point, great project. Greenup County with the help of several partners. These are things that we're doing each year. So in 25, the South Fork, the Green River Lock and Dam, and then Lake Linville, we have a rebuild there. So this is the good stuff. Admin services. This is an important part of our agency. Again, we want to thank you all for many things that you've done for us as a legislative body to give us the ability to achieve our mission. I'm deeply indebted to you all for what you've done for us. We are a very scrutinized agency. People care about the department. And as you can see, I have an auditor in my office almost all the time, and for good measure and for good reason. We have routine audits. We have an annual audit that the state auditor performs. We have federal audits, we have desk audits, and then we have folks that show up for specific audits. But the reason I put the blank sheet of paper in this slide, and I'd like to thank my staff for all their help with this, but those would be the findings of our last 2 audits. We don't have any. I'm really thankful for that, because in these jobs where we have a public trust, there's a great deal of responsibility for the decisions we make. And coming from the private sector, a lot of times it's about outcome. Don't get me wrong, outcome matters. But whenever we have a process that we have to follow as a state agency or a federal entity, the process oftentimes is more important than the outcome. You have to comply with law in order to do your job. So I say that to the credit of my people. When we do some of these processes, sometimes they're terribly arduous, they're long, they're complicated. And so as we go through procurement, or we go through audits, the multitude of things that we do, admin services is a critical piece of the agency that the public wants to hunt and fish, but we have to administer all these programs to be successful in what we do. So I'm thankful for the auditors. I'm thankful that we are held to a high standard, and we have all kinds of other accountability, and you all know that in your all's positions, from Government Contract Review Committee and confirmations and reg review. As you all know, occasionally we bring some regs over here, and we're thankful for what you all do, and we appreciate all the calls that you get on the behalf of the agency, and I hope that you feel comfortable to reach out to us whenever you have any questions. The marketing division. So Brian Blank is going to stay here after your committee meeting. If you want a goodie bag, he's got some notepads and things. But I wanted to show you this. This is hand sanitizer, folks. This is not mouth spray. So it kind of looks like mouth spray, and I know several folks have sprayed themselves in the mouth. This is also 62% alcohol. So anyway, if you get one of these goodie bags, I just want to give you a heads up. So if you look at our slide, you can see some of the places that we go. You can say, well, why would you go meet with catfishermen in Louisville? Well, folks that love what we love, that's what they do. And so when you get the chance to meet with them when they're not on the water, that's what you do. And so networking with our stakeholders is important. If you have never seen some of these activities, I'll tell you, some of my friends here are going to be upset with me, but on March 14 and 15, if you have never been to the NASP state tournament, you will be blown away. Thousands and thousands of people attend that archery shoot, and it's an incredible event. So if there's something on that list that you can go to all of them, but don't miss NASP. We also have a program for those folks that don't hunt or fish, and if you do hunt or fish, you can still join, but it's Kentucky Wild. And so there's over 1,000 species that we don't hunt or fish in Kentucky, and if you want to support conservation and you don't want to hunt or you don't want to fish, you can join Kentucky Wild. We have all kinds of great membership opportunities with Kentucky Wild. For example, I went to a bat cave one day, and I can tell you I was kind of nervous. I'm thinking I watched too many Scooby-Doos or something, I guess. But when I go into this cave, I'm thinking there's going to be bats flying around, but in fact they're hibernating. I'll try to be as quick as I can be. And when we get in, they've got collars, they've got radio telemetry on them. We can tell you the cave they winter in and the tree hole they summer in Pennsylvania. And you've heard blind as a bat. That's creation doing what creation does. And if you join Kentucky Wild, some of those experiences are available. And so I can tell you I didn't have any bats bite me or land on my face or any of those things, but it was quite the experience. So you've all heard about our fisheries division. This is the biggest business of Kentucky Fish and Wildlife. And Chairman Hale retired from the fisheries division. We have approximately 1 million people that participate in fishing in Kentucky on an annual basis. And it's relatively inexpensive. For a senior, it's $12. For a statewide license, it's $23. And what an opportunity to get out and enjoy Kentucky waters. We stock 4.5 million fish on an annual basis across Kentucky public waters, and it gives people a tremendous opportunity. We're constantly putting habitat in Kentucky waters. Why would we do that? If we stock 4.5 million fish, that's great. But why don't we make millions of fish reproduce in Kentucky waters on their own? That's the goal. Let's make these lakes fertile so that they grow the fish that they need in them. And that's why we do the habitat work. All right, so we're really proud of this young man here. His name's Waylon. Another impromptu. We have so much good content we could probably come monthly. Waylon shows up at headquarters one day and he catches a trophy fish. And we give him a cool fish poster and our artist signs it for him. But Waylon, and his thank you, he draws our logo, which is actually a pretty good job. And we're excited to have the Waylons to give us a future and the opportunity, but an example of a fish caught with our stocking program here in a urban area where people that don't own land have an opportunity to go fish. Wildlife, you're all familiar with, from whether it's a deer that runs out in front of you on the interstate or you see this beautiful dove field. Bald eagle recovery is an amazing conservation project. We burn approximately 10,000 acres per year, and that creates ideal habitat for small game and for large game as well. East Kentucky, we have focused on that, and you can say, well, why would you do that? Well, there's so much open space and large property owners in eastern Kentucky. It's much easier for us to put fire on the ground in Clay County than it is in Scott County. And it's effective, and it gives us the opportunity on lands that we can't get tractors on, we can't get big equipment to do things to manage so that we have grass, and in an area where we need more grasslands. All right, and then the wildlife division, we have all kinds of great stuff going on. Here's the highlight. How does a department like ours buy all this land and accumulate these assets and these resources? It's not through an agency that has a plethora of money that we're generating. But never before have we seen opportunities through the sales of guns and ammunition that come back to the states than what we've seen recently and perhaps in the last decade. So we get an allocation to be able to buy land. So it's not extra monies that we sell through licenses. I just want you to know that. But what we accomplished with this General Assembly to acquire 54,000 acres of easement is the conservation project of an age. You all were part of that. I can't tell you how significant that is. And it's ideal. It didn't come off the tax base. It's in an area where we need opportunity, and it's in perpetuity. And for a little over $100 per acre, we have 54,000 acres the public can enjoy in perpetuity. And so that model, we have broke a mold where we can do this. We can do this in Western Kentucky. We can do it in Eastern Kentucky. But at the same time, people could still farm it. People could still log it. People can utilize the land like they did before. It just creates public access. And we're thankful. We're really thankful for what you all did to give us that opportunity. So in closing, I have a video to show you. And again, we have so much good content. This video is something I'm excited about, but what are we doing that's not status quo? And this is the example.
I think for those of us that call Kentucky home, we'd all agree that it's one of the most beautiful places to live in our country. From the mountains in the eastern part of our state, to the farmland in the western part of our state, to the streams and lakes and forests in between, Daniel Boone was right when he said heaven must be a Kentucky kind of place. In the 1930s, two senators by the name of Key Pittman and Willis Robertson were instrumental in creating legislation that would protect and improve wildlife populations and habitats across our country by taxing citizens who purchased guns and ammunition. Add to that the oversight of hunting across our country by Fish and Wildlife departments and the purchase of hunting licenses from those departments, and you'll quickly realize there's a reason our nation has the wildlife populations that we have. Hunters are the best conservationists, not only because we invest billions of dollars each year in the protection of God's creation, but more importantly because we help farmers strike a balance between food for people and food for wildlife. One of the most successful conservation stories in our nation's history actually happened right here in the state of Kentucky in the 1990s, with the reintroduction of 1,500 elk from western states. 2 decades later, Kentucky has a thriving elk population that generates a lot of extra revenue by hunters for continued conservation work. I like to refer to those kind of efforts as creation care. As someone who spends a lot of time hunting and fishing, I not only want to enjoy all that the natural world provides, I want to leverage it for the glory of God and for the good of others. And that's where you come into play. Southland recently entered into a partnership with 2 of my favorite organizations, Kentucky Fish and Wildlife and Hunters for the Hungry. As you know, there are now more than 1 million deer living off the land in Kentucky. And even though hunters harvest somewhere in the neighborhood of 140,000 deer every year, the population continues to grow, which can create this perfect storm of too little food and too much disease among the herd. At the same time, we're seeing an alarming increase in food insecurity issues among children across the Commonwealth. Every night, thousands of children are going to bed hungry in our state, and that should bother all of us who live here. As you may or may not know, Southland provides food for roughly 1,000 of those children on a weekly basis through our backpack ministry. We invite our church family to bring in specific food items every week, and those food items are placed in empty backpacks. And once they're filled with healthy food, they're distributed in local schools. Now, one of the things we've lacked on the menu over the years is a healthy source of protein. So over the last few years, we've been experimenting with venison, with deer meat, to create a recipe that will not only taste good to children, but will also meet a very real nutritional need in their life for protein. And that's where this meat stick comes into play. It is high in protein, it tastes incredible, it doesn't have to be refrigerated, it's generated from an animal that we're harvesting across the state already, it's inexpensive to make, and it's free to deliver to children in need through our backpack initiative. So if you like to hunt, please consider donating a deer so that we can feed more children in Kentucky and at the same time continue to protect the deer population for future generations to enjoy. Thanks again for your interest in this incredible opportunity to leverage natural resources for the good of children and for the glory of God.
Thank you, Commissioner. Outstanding presentation to the committee here today. Appreciate it very much. Thank you for your work and everything that you're doing. I know your agency is certainly not as large as some of the fish and wildlife agencies across the country, but you're doing a great job as a commissioner, and we got what a gem that we have here in the state of Kentucky, and the programs that are being implemented is, providing just incredible resources for our hunters and our fishermen. We do have several questions. I'm going to ask you if you could please just to limit it to one question because we do have three more presenters. First question is from Representative Bratcher. Representative Bratcher.
Well, I had 5 questions, but I'll knock it down to 1. So.
We better just go with one.
That was a great presentation. I spent Thursday night with Fern Creek Sportsman Club, and they had a wonderful program for kids that are shooting clay, clay discs, whatnot.
Pigeons, yeah.
Yeah. But here's my question. So you guys helped me quite a bit when the bear came through Fern Creek. You helped me quite a bit when the coyotes were there. Now we got turkey vultures that are hanging out on cell towers, and they're putting droppings all over the neighborhoods. Is there anything you can do about that?
I'm going to sound like the prototypical government employee here. They are a federal bird, so we yeah. But what I can lead you to, we have resources through our website to help you to get a permit, and Kentucky Farm Bureau as well can help. I can't tell you in a municipality that you really have a solution there, but in terms of farms, damage to livestock, things of that nature, those are potential solutions. There are things you can do outside of killing with sound, and you can.
They've tried everything, Commissioner.
Right.
They've tried everything, and they're just dropping. I mean, it's kind of funny in one way, but it's really serious in another because they're waking up. It looks like snow fell on their house, and I'm talking about at least a dozen houses.
Next door at the mansion it's a common issue as well with vultures.
We do have a contact with the federal government that we give people, and I'm happy to pass that on to you that you could give to your constituents. And that would put them in direct contact with someone that could come out on site and potentially help them or at least advise them on other options maybe they haven't tried yet.
Thank you.
Representative Cook, is your question that complicated?
No question.
All right,
just a comment.
you're up then.
I want to thank the Fish and Wildlife. We just got a brand new boat ramp in Bourbon County. It's opening up into this very soon, I think. It'll open up, and it's going to be the only public access we have in Bourbon County. It's going to open up 10 miles of creek on Hingston. So very excited about getting with Scott Wells and getting up the creek there. And it's going to be a good time. I want to brag on the commissioner, and he would never say this, but I'm going to tell you how uniquely situated he is to run Fish and Wildlife, because not only is he an excellent outdoorsman, and I've seen firsthand, I've gone out with him, he's an excellent outdoorsman, but he also comes with a very good business background, and I just can't imagine anybody else more suited to be in that spot. And Kentucky is blessed to have you there, and grateful that you are there. And if anybody has not been out in the outdoors for a while, and I want to thank the commissioner because he got me to go back out. And 2 months ago, I went out with my son. I hadn't been dove hunting in a couple of years, and we went out on a Sunday afternoon and sat next to a roll bay out in the middle of a field with my son for a couple hours. And I tell you what, it was way better than playing. We play a lot of baseball and a lot of stuff on the farm, but that was a day well spent. And maybe if you're new to it, get with the commissioner. I know he'd take you out there. You can get your license online. It's super easy to do. And the other thing I want to leave with is, you all didn't talk about search and rescue. There have been several events in Kentucky where you guys have been one of the first people on the scene, so especially with some of the flooding. So thank you for everything you guys do. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Cook. Good comments. Representative Callaway.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate the presentation. We could probably spend a lot of time on the subject that I want to discuss, but I want to just throw some things out there, if it's okay, briefly, Chairman,
Briefly, please.
and then ask a question. But I think it's been out in the public that there was a CWD case that has been found that was in Breckinridge County, in my county. And so I just want to clear something up quickly and discuss something. I know you'll have a meeting about this today. But a lot of the reports in the media has been that a dead deer was found with chronic wasting disease, and that wasn't the case at all. This was a healthy deer as far as from appearance. It wasn't decimated. These people have 150 head of deer on their farm inside of a 10-foot fence. They've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into this business, so it is definitely devastating for them. Personally, but it also requires a response. And so I just want to make sure that that's understood. Those things are taken into consideration when the response is given, and that we could be very tailored and detailed on the response. There's been some discussion that there would be, that we're going to ban baiting in some areas, which our outfitters that are there it will absolutely destroy their hunting season, and the hundreds of thousands, literally hundreds of thousands of dollars that come into our county through these outfitters. And so I didn't know if you could speak to it a little bit, but I just think it's important that people understand that it was inside of a fence, that they have healthy deer on the farm. We don't know what the outcome's going to be, but an over response is definitely going to be devastating to some of these people. They're reaching out to me, and I just wanted to advocate for them and get your response on that.
So that's a great question, and please ask if you all would like to talk further about this. This is a very complex issue, 100% fatal. So what happened is a deer was harvested inside of a captive facility, and it's required by the USDA that those deer are tested. So this was hunted, shot, and for human consumption. That's why that animal was tested. We're very disappointed to hear about it, because in fact the transportation side of it, in fairness, is a bit nightmarish to consider that there could be cross-contamination. So I don't have enough information to tell you what happens next, but we have what's called an AFWA plan in place, government acronym, get ready, Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. Best management practices are what we use. So a standard would be banning baiting for a 30-mile radius from that site. There's a lot more to come and a lot more details, but the main thing that would probably impact this body would be carcass transportation. So those carcasses will need to remain in that 30-mile buffer. Representative Callaway and I, we're going to have hours of conversation absolutely about this. Representative Tate, it's going to affect your counties as well, so we will be meeting with you all very soon, and I appreciate what you all do, and we want to work through this the best way that we can.
Is that all, Representative Callaway?
No, I just wanted to reiterate again that if the more people that can be involved to make it as narrowly tailored as possible, but also keep us in compliance with whatever federal laws are out there, just, that those people have a seat at the table and input, and the baiting aspect really, outside of the fact that their business could potentially be lost. There's been discussion that they will totally depop the entire herd that is there. So that has been some of the discussion that may come out of this. But everything else, the tentacles that this reaches out into, specifically outfitters and things of that nature, I think if we look at it, the individual case, that we could probably come to something that doesn't affect as many people as that this is potentially going to affect. So,
And one addition, we don't have any purview or authority over the animals inside that facility. Our resource management's for wild animals in the wild. So, but we will be in touch, and I appreciate your comments.
Representative Tipton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, Jenny. Appreciate you all being here today. First, was not able to attend the event in Anderson County at Beaver Lake, but certainly appreciate that addition to that community. If nobody's ever been to Beaver Lake, I encourage you to take advantage of it. One quick question, lot of positives. One negative that we have to deal with in the wildlife management, particularly for waterways, is invasive carp. I know we've had a lot of discussion, so my question is real simple. Are we gaining ground? Are we treading water? Or are we falling behind in the population of invasive carp in Kentucky?
So great question, and this is something we could do an entire committee presentation on as well. So we are exceeding 10 million pounds in the West Kentucky region. We are gaining ground in Barkley and Kentucky lakes. On the Ohio River, that's a different story. We would expect that. Carp aren't reproductive in the lakes, so that's why that matters. We need buffers for those lakes. So we're gaining ground in the lakes. We're probably treading water at best in the rivers. But what are we doing? We are expanding into commercial gears. We're going to allow different techniques that remove more fish in a shorter period of time. And frankly, there is a very bright side because the industry is becoming stronger and stronger. And there are families that are taken care of fairly well that work hard through commercial fishing for invasive carp. And so really good news since I've been here. We were 1 million pounds per year, and now we're in excess of 10 with a short-term goal of about 20 million pounds per year, making a big difference, and people are noticing it.
Senator Williams.
Well, I was just going to ask you about your comment about the federal government being full of vultures, but I think that probably needs no further explanation. So, that was it. Thank you very much. Okay. Hopefully that's the last one.
Senator Thayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, Jenny, thank you for coming before the committee. This might be my last time to say so publicly. I want to thank you for your service and your continued stewardship of our wildlife resources. It's been great to work with you all, and I appreciate your efforts to continue to improve the department for those who use those resources. So thank you very much for that. Appreciate it, and maybe after I'm done here, I'll finally have time to go hunting with you. Senator Chambers Armstrong has volunteered to make it bipartisan, so maybe we can try to knock down a buck over there in Fleming County. And also, Mr. Chairman, if Representative Bratcher secures himself a federal permit to harvest turkey vultures, I'm in. I have a beautiful 20 gauge over and under Beretta that I do know how to load and unload, and would love to join you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Maddox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a quick question for the commissioner. I'm going to take it back to CWD, and I hate to do it, but it takes about, 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit to destroy a prion. So my question would be, if any government entity were to compel the destruction of a large number, say 150 deer, are there any incinerators, or does Fish and Wildlife have the capability to incinerate at 1,800 degrees? These animals, or what does abatement look like? What would that look like?
So in fact, I don't think there's ever been a proven situation where animals are removed from the landscape and you have had what I would call abatement. It's in the environment. So we can't cook the soil, we can't bleach. There is no cleaning methodology to prion disease. So we do have an incinerator, and we do incinerate a number of whitetails, but not captive. Again, we're talking about in a surveillance zone where we're testing animals for the public, free of charge. We are disposing of those carcasses through our incinerator. That's what we do. Not practical, not recommended for a facility to be depopped and then think that you're not going to have potential for chronic wasting disease to still be on that landscape. And so does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. It just, whenever you'd indicated that there was a plan for abatement, that's one of the first things that comes to mind, because this stuff does live in the soil. It's not something that you're going to just be able to wipe out. So what does that look like? How are you going to control the individual animals, whether they are captive, whether they are natural, occurring in the wild? How are we going to handle that situation? If you look at other states out west, I don't think that we have a clear answer on that. And I'm not saying that you would somehow be able to supernaturally devise one, but I think whenever we're talking about not over managing, that is something to factor in, that you can't just burn your way out of it necessarily, and there are not a lot of good solutions.
Yeah, and to our peril, we don't have an apex predator in Kentucky. So out west in some of these states, sick animals do tend to be harvested by apex predators. So that is a disappointing part to this situation. But we need to be prayerful that we don't have a viral, for lack of a better term, but a spread that's expedited. And so it's a critical time right now, because we have 2 confirmed cases of chronic wasting disease, one in Ballard County and one in Breckinridge County. It's a critical time to make good decisions right now so that we don't enhance that spread. It's all that we can do.
Thank you, Commissioner, and Ms. Gilbert, for a great presentation today. I know we had a lot of questions, great questions, and some wonderful comments, and I just want to end by saying thank you again, following up on what Representative Cook said, and Senator Thayer as well. The work you're doing there, you're doing a great job with the department, and we appreciate it very much. The department's on solid ground right now, and we have a great leader there, and I want you to know from our perspective, we appreciate you being here with us today. And thank you so much for all that you do. Just one other thing, real thanks so much for this hunter education training and courses that are out there. That is really vital, and attempting to get our youth back involved. I know we're losing a lot of those to other activities, but in anything and everything that we can do to involve more of our youth in any of those activities and through the camps, those are great camps. And again, we appreciate everything you do, and thank you for being with us today. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
We have 39 minutes left, so we're going to have to kind of step on it a little bit here. The next item on the agenda is from the Kentucky Public Pension Authority. Are any of the folks, is anyone here? Okay, yes, sir. Please come right on up, sir. And he is going to give us just a quick update on the agency amendment to 105 to KAR 1-411, 105-1-411. Please, both of you, would you introduce yourself for the record, and then you may proceed.
Ryan Barrow, Executive Director, KPPA.
Hello, Erin Surratt. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Benefits at KPPA.
Go right ahead. You briefly as you can, if you can explain the amendment to the committee, and then we're going to take some action on that.
Yes, we're going to be very brief. The regulation that we're speaking to today is going through the process. It establishes procedures and eligibility requirements for retired members in the reg, and we have a small non-material change we're requesting.
Thank you. We are seeking to ask for an amendment that can be seen in number 2 to change the date that's in the proposed version. The proposed version says for a member with a higher date that began July 1st, 2003 through July 31st, 2004, that should be membership date instead of hire date. That was just an oversight that we missed prior to filing the regulation. So we're just asking for that amendment to clarify that section.
So is that it?
That is it. If you want a little, I know that you have short amount of time, so I can go into a little bit of the history of the why this is, or if there are questions, I'd be glad to just go ahead and take those.
Senator Wheeler has a question, I think.
Yeah, I'm just so membership date versus hire date. could this impact, I guess, a current employee's eligibility or date for benefits?
The proposed amendment that we have here is our current policy for administering these health insurance benefits. If we were to leave it and not make the amendment, that could change how currently 309 retirees' benefits are processed. So that is why we are asking for this amendment today.
So those 309 retirees, would it? Let's just put yourself in their shoes. Would this help them or hurt them?
This would, if the change is not made, then it could hurt them. It would hurt them.
Senator Mills, did you want to? I think you had actually had some issues or some concerns with this. Did you want to comment on this?
She just answered all my questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, Representative Tipton, go ahead, please.
I believe it's my understanding that if we take no action on the proposed reg, it goes into effect immediately upon adjournment of the meeting.
Repeat that for me again, please.
If we take no action on the reg, it will go into effect immediately upon the adjournment of the meeting.
Is that correct?
So I don't believe we have to take action on it.
I don't think we have to take action on it, but yes, we got somebody coming up for a minute at regs. She has informed me that you are correct, Representative Tipton. It would go into effect immediately if we don't take any action. But if I understood correct, we would lose we would only have the reg for 90 days, and then okay. My recommendation is to take action on the reg today. There is another question, Representative Callaway.
Yeah, just for my clarification, can someone be hired but not be a member?
That is correct. So just real briefly, I'll be brief. In 2003, House Bill 430 amended KRS 61702, which is the health insurance statute, to create a new benefit structure for members who are hired on or after July 1st, 2003. A hire date is not defined in the statute. So a member could be hired prior to them actually becoming a member. So in 2004, House Bill 290 amended that change to say for members with a membership date on or after July 1st, 2003, then they fall under this benefit structure. So for people who became members in that 13-month period, if they were hired before July 1st, 2003, then they fall under the percentage based contribution for health insurance. So for an example, someone like me, my membership date was the same date that I was hired because we start reporting state employees as soon as they become regular full-time employees. A CERS employer might have a probationary status of 6 months and they successfully complete the probationary status and they become regular full-time and they start being reported at that time.
Just quick follow-up. So do we know how many people that will be affected by this change, or are there any? And if so, what is the impact that it will have?
This is how we are currently, with the amendment that's shown here, adding the membership date, this is how we are currently administering the benefit. So we have 309 individuals who have already retired who fall into this scenario that have a hire date prior to July 1st, 2003, but a membership date after that date. So those are the ones that are currently impacted. We do not get the hire date information until a member retires. We have about 2,500 members in that time period that could potentially be affected. But again, it depends on, like me, my membership date and my hire date's the same. So.
Seeing no further, I'm sorry, Representative Graham, go ahead, please.
So in the past, that's how it's always worked? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And we're just going to make it the same way?
Yes.
If we pass this?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, and as Aaron's pointed out, this is our current policy, but this is also the standard term that's used in the balance of our regulations. So we're basically using the same term and not confusing the issue with this change we're asking for.
Is there a motion to approve the, I'm sorry, I apologize. Representative Tipton, go ahead, please.
On the second line of proposed reg, where it says his or her hire date, would it be necessary to change that terminology as well?
No, it's just for members that have an actual membership date between that period.
Just wanted to clarify that
then
point.
we will use their hire date to determine their insurance benefit.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I move the committee accept the proposed regulation.
Second.
Is there a second? There is a motion made and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Appreciate it.
much. Item number 3 on our agenda today is next we have Representative McPherson and his guests that will be coming to the table to discuss with us concerning in the 2024 regular session House Bill 777, an act relating to government contracts and declaring an emergency. Senator Thayer, I just about forgot what administrative regs was about until we discussed that right there. Okay. Would you please both introduce yourself for the record, and then you may move forward.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm Sean McPherson, Representative 22nd District.
My name is Danielle Clore, and I'm the CEO of Kentucky Nonprofit Network.
Well, it's good to have you. We have transitioned from morning to afternoon, so afternoon to both of you, so you may proceed. If you could, you have 12 minutes.
Okay.
If you don't need that long, that'd be great.
That'd be great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee, for hearing us. I would be remiss if I didn't say Ed Darce was my conservation officer growing up, and, you know, I always enjoyed when he came and talked about Camp Curry. So that's something you never forget. So the 777 is a House bill that we passed last year through the House. It's a contracts bill. You know, the way I look at the kind of the way you live life or do business, and maybe what your parents had said all your life, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. And so we sent out in House Bill 1 last year $2.84 billion that are going to be put in under contract in the next year or so, and possibly more as we go forward, we hope. You know, we have a contract situation, I think, that is just not as good as it could be. I had a situation that came up in my district last year to where in 2019 we had a grant that was a grant for $200,000 for a depot that had been, it was actually a depot where Dollar General, you know, or the home of Dollar General there, where they had started, and it had been abandoned. It's no longer functional, and we were going to fix it up and make it a place that people could come and tourism. And they received a grant in 2019. Well, for some reason, they kept trying to get, and in 2023, last year, they asked me if there was anything I could do to help them secure some of this money, because they'd actually used some of it for design, but through COVID, it got sitting on someone's desk, and they couldn't get it activated, couldn't get the money. And we tried, and finally, through a lot of, never did receive a phone call, but through some letters, finally received some direction, and by the time all this was done, the bids came in. Now think about it, 2019, prior to COVID, prior to inflation like we've had it, to 2023, the regs that we were going to have to use for that $200,000 were so stringent that it was easier to turn that back in than it was to go through with it. And that just, if we fund something, we should have a contract that answers us enough that we have a way of getting through there, and we have a way of keeping in contact so that we can utilize the money that we put out before inflation eats it up. And that's my real reason for trying to have a better contract. You can't negotiate if you can't have a good contract. If the person that you're negotiating with doesn't think that you'll pay them on time, then they're not going to actively bid a strong contract. They're going to go to where they think, follow the dollar. And if we can't follow the dollar with a good contract, then I don't know how the state's going to do business and do it very efficiently. And this has a reporting requirement on it. This says that if you're doing a contract, if you have a contract in any agency here, we're going to be reporting back. Now, each agency may have their own nomenclature of what is, what's acceptable for their particular need. They can decide what their time frame is and when they need this contract to be, whether it's 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days. I don't care. I want a contract that when you sign it, somebody is going to say, I'm going to do what I signed. That's all I'm going to say. I've got to turn it over to my colleague.
I don't think that's appropriate at this particular point, so we better. It sounded good, though, so go ahead.
That's all I want when we get back to the session.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Representative McPherson. Again, my name is Danielle Clore, and I'm the CEO of Kentucky Nonprofit Network. We are the association of charitable 501c3 nonprofits across Kentucky. We have 1,100 or so members, but we come in contact with about 7,000 nonprofits. And so I'm here today for us to talk about government grants and contracting practices and how they're hurting nonprofits' ability to serve Kentucky communities and ultimately your constituents. Nonprofits are businesses. We're unique businesses, but we are still businesses. And so for those of you who are business owners, I urge you to think about these processes and how they might impact you. Government, as you all know, often looks to nonprofits as critical partners. So sometimes providing statutorily required services on behalf of government, often because it's more affordable, more efficient, more collaborative. We can leverage other funds. And also to address things that we think are critical to our Commonwealth: health, mental health, education, transportation, etc. So the issue is when government does have grants and contracts with nonprofits and they do not cover the full cost, or they are not executed before services begin. So you may get word about the contract in July, but you don't get an agreement until August or September. You've got an obvious delay, and you're still required to have deliverables by June 30. When these same agreements do not require on-time payment of invoices, which is happening rampantly, or require often nonprofits to float government while they're waiting to receive reimbursements after payments are provided. So then ultimately, nonprofits cannot hire and retain vital staff, particularly frontline staff who are providing the services. They're often unable to make payroll without taking out costly lines of credit or loans if they can get them. That's not easy for a nonprofit organization to get. And ultimately, they're facing destabilized operations and a really unsustainable business model. So what does this mean for Kentuckians? It means wait lists for needed services. Sometimes it means closed programs. And ultimately, it means that folks cannot access supports that they need for self-sufficiency, for workforce participation, and for community safety. So as Representative McPherson talked about, House Bill 777 during the last session created an efficient framework for government, ultimately streamlining agreements to reduce confusion, requiring payment of invoices within 30 days, providing an interest penalty when the state does not pay on time, and requiring the Finance Administration Cabinet to create clear regs that address payments to entities to make them whole. If they've had to access a line of credit, there's a cost to that. And so that organizations would be able to get reimbursed and that there would be a very clear dispute resolution process. The other piece of that is the rights that organizations have must be in their agreements. A lot of folks did not. Some of these things were already in statute, and organizations didn't even know it was their right. So we think those are critical pieces. But ultimately, legislation like this, there may be some tweaks, helps ensure that Kentucky pays its bills on time, creating foundational structural solutions for the state's payment process to be sure nonprofits can do what they do best, and that's provide services. It helps employers recruit and retain staff, which is absolutely critical right now, helping ensure that they can pay their vendors on time. This has a ripple effect. When organizations don't get paid, they can in turn then pay their vendors, allowing Kentuckian to maximize and leverage federal dollars. And then ultimately, we want people to get these services so we can create communities where all Kentuckians can thrive. So what happens if we don't do it, if we do nothing? Ultimately, in many cases, the state is not meeting its legal obligations. We have stymied workforce participation. Nonprofits are facing unsustainable cash flow that impacts services, which ultimately impacts our quality of life. Closed programs, Kentuckians not getting the care that they need, and ultimately that means communities are less safe, and it's costing all of us, the taxpayers, the state, and nonprofits. So a couple of quotes from our members. Late payments are putting our organization in an impossible position. We've exhausted all the small cash reserves we had, and with a decline in donations, we can no longer float the state while we wait for late payments and agreements. And frankly, even if they could, they should not have to. On the contracting process, when we ask for approval of changes to agreements, we sometimes wait up to a year for approval. We are stuck and unable to provide effective service delivery as needed. So ultimately, nonprofits, again, are businesses, unique businesses, but still businesses. 1 in 10 Kentuckians works for a charitable nonprofit. We are the 3rd largest private sector employer in the Commonwealth. So we are critical to Kentucky's workforce, and we are also essential to workforce participation and so much more. But in the workforce participation space, job training and readiness, care responsibilities, child care, elder care, physical health, mental health, transportation, all of the things that allow Kentuckians to participate in the workforce flow through charitable nonprofits. So I cannot stress how critical this issue is for all of the things that are priorities of the General Assembly. So reforms are critical, they're foundational, they are immediately needed. And just to point out that a lot of organizations do not contract with the state at all. But the ripple effect of this, it impacts every nonprofit, whether they do or do not, because it is putting a strain on the entire sector. Unfortunately, what I've shared is not unique to Kentucky. This is a national issue with federal, state, in every state, as well as local contracts. So I think the opportunity for us here in the Commonwealth, though, is to be a model for how we can fix it. I know I'm on calls with my colleagues across the country all the time about what's in House Bill 777 and how we can move forward. The other thing I wanted to share, we are in an ongoing communication with the Finance Administration Cabinet to be sure that we address many of these issues through regulation. However, there are some things we think are important to address through law. We want to be sure that regardless of the administration, that we are getting some of these things taken care of. So we ask for your support as soon as possible when you see us again in 2025. We recognize these will be long-term efforts. This is really just step one and foundational. So any questions at all?
Is there any questions? Senator Nemes.
Yes, I noticed the 12%. Isn't that a little outdated, 12%?
We would think so. It's 1% per month, so 12% per year.
It's still 12%.
Yeah.
And then you said 1 in 10 work for a nonprofit.
They do.
In the state?
In the state, yes. It's impressive, don't you think?
Hard to believe.
Yeah.
Well, we thank you for your presentation today. I felt this was important to put back on our radar, to have you come and speak to our committee of both House members and Senate members. House Bill 777, we passed that in the House last year, 95-0, and so we're hoping we can get that through again, and just encourage my Senate colleagues to take a good look at that when it gets to you. Representative Rollins and Representative Herron, you're moving to that chamber, so that's our first priority for both of you. Take a good look at that.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Last but not certainly least, today we are going to have our final and last item on the agenda. Representative Hart and his guests are going to come and discuss to us today from the previous session, House Bill 141, an act relating to water fluoridation. So if you will, all of you will, whoever you have joining you, Representative Hart, make sure your mics are on. Green light is on, and if you would both introduce yourself for the record, and then you may proceed for 15 minutes.
Representative Mark Hart, 78th House District.
Hello, my name is Cindy Batson.
Is your green light on, ma'am?
It is on. Is that better?
Yeah, go ahead, introduce yourself.
My name is Cindy Batson. I am a registered nurse of 20 years, and I'm a mother of 3 children. I've been able to bring testimony to this committee several times about this topic since it was filed in 2018. Thank you for having me today.
And real quickly, before they do begin, there was information that was have been sent out to each member earlier this morning. There was some information in favor of this. There was some information that was opposed to this. I knew that we were not going to have time for all of the individuals to come and testify, so we sent that out. We sent that out through email this morning, so you have that in your email if you would check and want to look at that. So, Representative Hart, I'm sorry it took up a minute. You'll have a minute extra. Go ahead, please.
All right, no problem. We're going to start out. I want to show a real brief video. This is the show Full Measure, which is a nationally syndicated news show with Cheryl Atkinson. They recently come to Kentucky, and they did a story on water fluoridation that kind of explains both sides of this. So we want to show this video real fast.
It's got an NFL offer.
Don't play with me.
I think I'm going to take it.
NFL. Aren't you a little too old to be playing football?
Could we get through the commercial?
I think we have to use it.
With DraftKings, new customers turn $5.
Everybody turn away.
Yeah, we're not in.
For almost 80 years, some American cities have been adding the chemical fluoride to the drinking water for healthy teeth. Since the start, some have claimed it's an unsafe practice, while others cried that's a conspiracy theory. Lisa Fletcher finds a growing number of communities are trying to get the fluoride out and are pointing to sound science.
From homeschooling to home-cooked meals, Kentucky mom Carrie Ashour has a strong influence over what's going into her kids' minds and bodies. But despite her best efforts, there's something flowing into her home over which she has no control. Mandatory fluoride in the tap water.
I don't get to choose what's in my water. I have no control over that, especially since it's a state mandate that they have to put it in.
Kentucky is one of 13 states that require water districts to add fluoride. Across the U.S., about 73% of people served by community water systems have fluoridated water.
It's been linked to ADHD, IQ, development. Unless you install a whole house filter, there's no way to get it out.
Ashour is supporting a bill that would allow individual water districts in Kentucky to decide whether or not to fluoridate.
How important is it for you to have a voice in what your kids are consuming? If we can't advocate for our kids, then why are we here?
Since 1951, Kentucky, like many states around that time, started requiring fluoride to be added to all tap water. Fluoride was a generally unwanted byproduct of aluminum, fertilizer, and iron ore manufacturing, until the industry promoted the idea of adding it to water supplies. Today, selling fluoride used in water is a $1.2 billion a year global business, and one that has rarely been without controversy, starting in the 1950s, with concerns ranging from fluoride being a communist plot to undermine public health, to it being a form of mandatory medication. Now, there is a modern and growing body of research suggesting that fluoride may be linked to health issues like bone fractures, joint problems, and neurological issues, especially in children.
Fluoride is a neurotoxin. In a child, that is extremely critical to consider because the brain is being developed. Let's take a look down here.
Dr. Jack Call is a dentist in Louisville, Kentucky, and part of a group of more than 800 dentists, physicians, and researchers questioning the safety of fluoride in the water.
Why take a chance with that? We can repair the tooth. You can't repair brain.
Call says the 50-plus-year-old science used to support fluoridating water is out of step with the latest research. Everybody can find science to fit their narrative.
Yes.
What makes the science behind fluoride being dangerous to you more reliable and more trustworthy?
These recent studies in the last 7 or 8 years, they've been funded by the National Institutes of Health. Typically, studies that are funded that way are done at very high quality research facilities and have been thoroughly vetted just to approve the funding before the actual research has started. So that adds a level of confidence.
But not for everyone.
I think when you get right down to it, the facts are on the side of the fluoridation.
Dr. Stephen Robertson is the executive director of the Kentucky Dental Association.
The science backs the effects that the fluoridation is having and supports that this is one of the top 10 public health initiatives that we've had in America.
How do you explain Kentucky being in the bottom 8 states for oral health and tooth decay, yet being the #1 fluoridated state in America?
As we've seen an increase in processed foods and changes in the diet and the increase in sugar intake and the high increase in soda with the acidic drinks and the high sugar content, there's going to be an increase in decay.
There are doctors and researchers that we've spoke to who have said when they try to have a conversation about the facts of fluoridation, there's a deflection to sugar or to diet rather than going back and forth about the risks and rewards of fluoridation.
Well, I think that's because the science is strongly on our side. The fluoride is doing what it can to help. It has to be the diet and the sugar, and that's why people keep coming back to that.
In the last 6 months, communities in at least a dozen states have voted to keep fluoride out of their tap water. Since 2010, it's been removed from more than 150 towns or counties. Just this week, a California court ruled in support of a ban to adding fluoride to drinking water across the country. The court found evidence that fluoride poses an unreasonable risk to health, particularly for children. The Environmental Protection Agency could challenge that ruling, which could send the case to the Supreme Court. Lawmakers in some states aren't waiting for the courts.
It's time to update this law. Let's take this out.
Republican Kentucky state lawmaker William Lawrence is co-sponsoring the bipartisan bill that would take fluoridation out of the hands of state government and give local water districts control.
If we could get this bill passed, you, the citizen, could go to your water district and say, hey, we want to stop this. We want this out of our water. And you get enough people behind it, majority rules.
And for moms like Carrie Ashour, she's counting on it.
As a mom, as a voting citizen, I will take that into account when I go to the polls.
For Full Measure, I'm Lisa Fletcher in Barry, Kentucky.
This wide open space and
Go ahead, please.
Thank you for giving us the space to share that with you. I feel like a lot of ground was covered in that. I've had the opportunity to speak before you before. I think we've talked about what water fluoridation is, what chemicals used, why we've been coming here since 2018. What I haven't had the opportunity to present to you before was this federal court case ruling that just happened on September 25th. So there was a snippet of it in that, but I'd like to read to you exactly what the judge said. You'll have access to a copy of it in meeting materials. We don't have it printed for you. It's about 300 pages. So I'm going to read this to you. This was from Judge Edward Chin of the 4th District Federal Court System. The issue before this court is whether the plaintiffs have established by a preponderance of the evidence that the fluoridation of drinking water at levels typical in the United States poses an unreasonable risk of injury to the health of the public within the meaning of amended TSCA. That's the Toxic Substance and Control Act. For the reasons set forth below, the court so finds specifically, and this is important, the court finds that fluoridation of water at 0.7 milligrams per liter, the level presently considered optimal in the United States, poses an unreasonable risk of reduced IQ in children. The court finds there is an unreasonable risk of such injury, a risk sufficient to require the EPA to engage with a regulatory response, One thing the EPA cannot do, however, in the face of this court's finding is to ignore that risk. And I implore each of you, one of the things Kentucky cannot afford to do is to ignore this risk. In our state, it is required that we add this optimal level of fluoride chemical to our drinking water to artificially elevate the level of fluoride. And we've presented scientific evidence to show that there's risk of harm. There are physicians in our state who are now prescribing water filters to their patients to help their health improve, maybe for a thyroid disorder, diabetes, behavioral disorders in children. And we're doing it here because we're required to put fluoride in our water. Since this ruling states municipalities across the country have stopped fluoridating their water, and in Kentucky, 0 have, because we can't, because it's the law. So I would ask you to help us do something about this.
Now, I want to emphasize to everybody, look at the legislation. It's the same legislation that we filed the last several sessions, but our legislation does not ban fluoride. It just removes the unfunded mandate, and it brings it to a local choice. With the new risk and the new data that's come out with the federal court ruling, at some point, if the state continues the mandate, the state's going to be responsible for the outcome. So this is a way, and my effort and my goal here is to undo an unfunded mandate. But now, with the recent studies that have come to light, with the Cochrane study and the National Toxicology Program study, we now know that there are some health risks. A federal judge has confirmed that with his ruling, and his ruling was based primarily on the scientific evidence that was presented by world-renowned experts at that hearing. So it's kind of changed the playing field, the game, so to speak. But with the risks now being identified and being confirmed, we as a state need to look, we had all good intentions when this mandate was put on there to help improve oral health. But are we going to cost the development of children? Are we going to create other medical problems so that we can have better health? Better oral health? So as you look at the data that we've sent to you and that you're going to be receiving in your email, consider all this. This bill will be coming back in this session. But once again, the bill is just to remove the unfunded mandate. Let the people drinking the water decide what they want to put in the water, but let's also remove that liability from the state of Kentucky. With that, we'll take some questions.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you.
Could I ask a point of order? Could he repeat what he said about liability real quick? Would that be okay?
You may.
Sure. What I'm referring to liability, the state of Kentucky, we mandate this be put in our water. Now that the data and the research is showing that it does create an unreasonable health risk, when people start seeing the outcomes, or if they unfortunately have a health problem based on the water fluoridation in our water, because we're mandating it, at some point the state's going to be responsible for that. That's the point I was trying to make.
We have 2 questions currently. Representative Rawlings, you are first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to add to what you've already testified into the video, but that second dentist, the dentist toward the end, was incorrect to say that the science was on the side of fluoridation, and it is not. As part of that court decision you referenced in California, they looked at high-quality studies. 18 out of 19 studies showed, they demonstrated lower IQs with higher fluoride exposure. And so these were statistically significant, 18 out of 19. So the latest science is on the side of the people, that we should have informed consent. We should be able to decide what's in our water. We shouldn't be subject to forced medication. So don't you think that the bottom line with this is involuntary forced medication is what we're taking in our water?
I think so, but that's just my personal opinion. Everybody needs to look at the data and make their own minds up for themselves. But I don't think as a state we should be mandating something that produces or has the potential to produce any type of health risk.
I'd like to point something out too. When we talk about the science being on our side, recently the Cochrane collaboration got together. Cochrane is a systematic review, recognized as the highest standard of evidence in evidence-based healthcare. And I have another just quick to share with you. We're oftentimes told that water fluoridation decreases dental decay by 25%. Most of that data was founded before 1975. So the Cochrane Library pulled all the research, and what they found to actually be true is there is insufficient evidence to determine the effect of cessation of community water fluoridation on caries and whether water fluoridation results in a change in disparities in caries according to socioeconomic status. We found no eligible studies that report caries outcomes in adults. So they're not finding that it's effective in adults. We have documentation showing that it could be neuroeffective in children. And this document shows us that if it's effective, it may decrease 1/4 of a decay in a person in a lifetime of consuming the water. So they're estimating it to be approximately 4% if it works at all. And I can make sure this is forwarded to you as well.
Representative Herron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple of, well, really one quick question. As it relates to the fluoride, has there been a fiscal note or an impact statement on what it would cost if the fluoride was taken out? Like, what would it cost the state as far as through Medicaid services? Or has there been anything related to the fiscal costs of the neurological issues that you're saying that are found in children?
That is another great question. So what we've been told historically is for every dollar spent adding fluoride to the drinking water, $38 is saved in the dental chair. Unfortunately, I don't think that we can quantify that now, knowing that there is more data showing that children who consume fluoridated water or are born to mothers who consume fluoridated water even have lower IQs, have higher risks of hyperactivity behaviors. We have people who are seeking treatment for endocrine disorders. Like I mentioned, physicians prescribing water filters. So the short answer to your question is we haven't obtained any type of fiscal note. The longer answer is it would be very difficult to quantify that data, and this mandate that requires fluoride be added to our water is unfunded, so the local water departments pay for that.
And that's one of the reasons we've never had a fiscal note produced on the legislation, because the legislation does not, since it's paid for and funded by the local water districts or the local municipalities, it'll vary per department.
Just one quick follow-up. I guess one of the main thing I was wondering is, would there be any type of impact if fluoride was not in the water as it relates to dental care? Like, has there been any studies or any look as far as that specifically?
According to this that I just read, the Cochrane Library, they said that there's no difference between fluoridated and unfluoridated water. They found there is insufficient evidence to determine the effect of cessation of community water fluoridation, so stopping it in practice. There isn't enough data to show one way or another. There has been talk of some communities that did, and they saw disparities in oral health and people seeking out care, but there were also other confounding variables, like people with access to care for the first time. So they were seeking out medical care. They hadn't been to a dentist before, and they found this decay in their mouth. So that it wasn't as effective as a study because there were confounding variables.
And I'll also add, too, we're the number one fluoridated, we have the number one fluoridation program in the country. We're the 49th in relation to good oral health care. So if this was working and we're the number one program, we should be at the top of the list, not at the bottom of the list. And the other thing, you've heard the one dentist in the presentation. He referred to the sugars and the processed foods. Well, every state in the country is facing that same amount: more sugar, more processed foods. But once again, we're the one that's doing fluoride or supposed to be fluoridating our water better than anybody else, but yet we're still at the bottom of the list.
We have 3 more people in the queue, so I'm going to ask you to please limit your question to one. We are standing between people and lunch right at this moment. So Representative Lockett, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be very brief. Back when I was a kid, of course, which was not that long ago, I know, contrary to popular opinion, they would come into the classroom and they would pump that gross, nasty stuff into a Dixie cup, and you'd have to drink it and kind of swish it around in your mouth and then stuff that gross napkin down in there and throw it away. What you're talking about, though, is ingested fluoride, correct? So you're not talking about like what's in toothpaste or the gross junk that's in schools. You're talking about what's ingested through water, right? So all the studies in terms of the effects on brain development and so forth is just ingested fluoride. Would that be correct?
That's what we're sharing with you, yes. And it is important to note that this is at levels that are currently available in our water. So 0.7 parts per million, which is considered the optimal level of water fluoridation. The acceptable level is 0.6 to 1.2 parts per million. So, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Representative Camuel.
Hi, yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for being here today. I've got a quick question, and I was trying to listen to the presentation as well as take some notes, but I'm wondering, are there any peer-reviewed research, or is there any peer-reviewed research from accredited medical associations, dental associations that are supporting your position on this?
100%. This EPA lawsuit took 7 years to come to fruition, to have a ruling, and that was all based on credible research. The Journal of the American Medical Association, PEDS, in 2019 published a maternal health study. I have one in front of me that was just published in May, and it also is published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. There's over 60 peer-reviewed pieces of literature now. And ultimately, the National Toxicology Program was one of the determining factors of the EPA ruling, and they produced a monograph a few months before the ruling took place that showed that water fluoridation, or it presents an unreasonable risk to human health for consumption.
Would you be able to provide links to those to the
Yes,
committee?
you should have access to most of those things in your meeting minutes. If not right now, then by the end of the day.
Thank
Yes, I'd be happy to send them directly to you.
Thank you.
As I said earlier, I think everyone either should have received all of that information or will soon. So hopefully everyone does get that. We have one more question from Representative Moser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for this presentation. I look forward to seeing the data that you send, and I'll go through that carefully. In the video, and you've stated too that Kentucky is #1 in fluoridation, and I don't know if that means that we have higher levels of fluoride in our water than other states. And then there are 13 states with fluoride. So in the states that don't fluoridate their water, do you see less ADHD and developmental disorders? Do you see less endocrine issues? Is the data going to show us that?
There's a little bit of confusion in that we're one of 13 states that require fluoride to be added to our water. And when we say the most fluoridated state in the nation, that is actually the most water systems have fluoride artificially elevated in the water because of our mandates. So any water system serving more than 1,500 people must have or shall have their water fluoridated, artificially elevated. So it doesn't mean we have more. It means we have more systems with it, and it's 99%. The optimal level is 0.7, so that's what everybody in the nation tries to get it at based on public health recommendations. So there are many states that do have fluoride added in their water, but they don't require it at the state level. So typically municipalities can decide. The bill that we bring before you says the governing bodies of the water systems will have that decision to make locally. And we don't, in the United States, have thyroid study, for example, but it's been done in other countries. It was done in Iran. They actually did a trial run of adding fluoride to their water. They tested a population. They tested their TSH, T4, T3, started adding fluoride to the water. 6 months later, tested again and decided to stop because it was noticeably impacting the community. There are IQ studies in China that have water systems that have high levels of fluoride, and yes, there is a large disparity in the learning potential of the children born in those areas. In the United States, we do have that information. We have it from JAMA, published in May. They surveyed mothers. They tested their urine to see who had the highest urinary fluoride concentrations, and then they gave them a survey, and the mothers who had the highest urinary fluoride concentrations when their children were born rated their children as having the highest rates of neurodevelopmental issues, whether it be anxiety, depression, hyperactivity behaviors, learning disorders, etc., at 36 months.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure.
Just one quick question. The 13 states, to make sure I understand this, those 13 states, municipalities still can put fluoride in water in those states, or is it no one in those 13 states uses it?
In 13 states, it's required. Kentucky is one of 13 states that require, by mandate at the state level, to have water fluoridated.
Okay. So I just want to make one. I want to make one point. Certainly, I had no intention today of not allowing everyone to speak on this. It just kind of came on all of a sudden without being able to. I knew the length of the meeting today. This meeting was basically just to get information, and as Representative Hart has stated, this bill that he's filing or is going to file is just to give that power back to the municipalities in the state. So, having said that, I want everybody to understand, if this bill does come before this committee or the committee that I chair, state government, I want to assure everybody that everyone will have their say, pro and con, on this, and to give all of their views. And this meeting today was not intended to not allow anyone to give their point of view on this, whether it was for or against. And I hope nobody took it that way. If you did, I apologize for that. But this was basically for information on this House bill that is going to be filed by Representative Hart. So I hope everyone understood that explanation. Having said that, our next meeting date will be Tuesday, November the 12th at 11 a.m. Thank you for being here. We are adjourned at this time.